And there we go. That was Barney Bentall live at the Vancouver East Cultural Centre. A song off his 2006 CD, A Gift Horse. And on the line with me right now from Vancouver, I'm thinking, is Barney Bentall. Welcome to the show, Barney.
Thanks, Chad.
Are you indeed calling from Vancouver?
Well, I live on an island fairly close to Vancouver. And that's where I'm calling from.
All right. Well, I can't thank you enough for giving us a call here at our radio station. The last song played as a request. I couldn't find the one off Gift Horse, so I got it off YouTube. Could you tell us a little bit about that song before we continue? Because that was the question that the person who requested it, Steve, would like to know more about that last song.
Oh, the Ballad of Old Tom Jones?
Yes.
Oh, well, I've also got this. I've got this ranch, this cattle ranch in the interior of BC. And basically, I wrote that. It's had many owners. I mean, this ranch goes way back to the 1800s. Probably not nearly to the extent that many of the farms and ranches go back in Quebec. But for our country, it's a pretty old one. And it had many owners, and one of the people that owned the ranch was this guy, Tom Jones. He was a real character. He died recently, but he was just, I don't know, it's one character that everybody talked about, and I guess he'd come over from England, I think, to homestead or to try and make a go of it. And I always find that whole concept really interesting. As Canadians, we're so much of the population came from somewhere else, and at one point in Canada they choose Canada as their home, and at what point what is your home? Is it where you came from, or where you settle? And so I found that kind of interesting. Plus these old timers, whenever I used to think I was hard done by doing all the chores on the ranch, I would go to this guy Kenny, and he's in the song. And Kenny, as a kid, used to work for Tom Jones, and he would tell me how they used to, in minus 50 degrees, have to feed the cattle with heavy horse team, and you'd realize that those people worked very hard and they didn't have it very easy. So at the end of the day, I'm a songwriter. I operated the ranch for a while. I was still doing music, just because I always wanted to do that sort of thing, and I realized that, at the end of the day, I'm a songwriter and a traveling musician. That's where my heart is, so that's what I do. Now,
a big portion of our audience would remember you from the big hits that you had, like Crime Against Love and Doin' Fine, Oh Shelley, among others. Your last album, Gift Horse, seemed to be a departure from those big hits into a more folky, folk-driven songs. Why the change?
Well, I like it all. I mean, the other night, I still play with my band, the Legendary Hearts, and it's, we might be getting older, but we can still rock pretty well, and so I love that, but I loved, Neil Young always seemed to be a great example of that, where, he's always engaged in both sides of that, rock and things that are a little bit more acoustic-based, folky, rootsier. And I like that. It was always part of what I did or the way I approached music. But, you get going down a certain pathway, and it was a little bit more kind of rock and roll based. And I just, when I took the break to ranch for a while, when I came back to it, I thought, I'm just going to make a record that I would really like to make right at this particular point. Now I've just finished this new one, The Inside Passage. It's coming out, coming out September 22nd. And it's a little bit more up-tempo, and you kind of, I don't know, I'm a person that sort of just follows my nose if we try and do what I, feel like doing at any particular point in time.
The single you released to us before the CD comes out, called Hold My Heart, definitely a country song. Is that indicative of what people will find on this album?
Well, it's a little bit like it's a little bit like even what we're talking about in terms of being rocky or folky or country or not. I've never been a real person to sort of try to slot things. It happens we have an incredibly creative fiddle player recording this record, and in a way it gave it a bit of that tinge. But, I play that song with my rock band, and it sounds like a rock song, but it's just, it seemed like the right thing at the time. So it's really interesting. It's getting played on all sorts of country radio stations, which has never really happened before, even though, I guess it's kind of fitting because I've been a little bit of a cowboy for the last, 7 or 8 years doing that, but I've never consciously set about to do country music per se. But it's interesting what happens. It's great though.
Well, the airplay is what counts, right?
Absolutely.
Now, where did you record this album?
We recorded it at my friend Johnny Ellis. He's got this. He's produced my last 2 records. He bought a house up in. It won't mean a lot to people out in Quebec, but it's there's kind of this deserty area in the interior BC. It's really striking in terms of its landscape, and this town called Ashcroft. And he bought a house there, and he's been and he put his studio in there, and it's just a wonderful place to record. It's just great, and all sorts of people have been recording there. I don't know if you guys play Ridley Bent, but he did his record there.
The same person
from Ridley Bent to Jane Sibry's recorded there. It's just become quite a place to go to record.
The same person that requested that last song, Old Tom Jones, introduced me to Ridley Bent as well. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, smart guy.
You'll love to hear that. Now, were there any notable events that happened before you actually stepped foot into the studio?
Are you thinking of anything in particular?
Oh, something in particular that might have influenced the your recording or the writing of the songs or something?
I don't know. I wanted to. It's called The Inside Passage. I wanted to have a record that was about moving through life. It was really sort of an analogy or a version of. We used to go on boat trips when I was a kid. Basically, the Inside Passage, and between Vancouver Island and the mainland, and there's so many spectacular sights and there, and so it is sort of harken back to that. That song's partly about that, but really it's more about about the what's in you, and as you take it through in this passage through life. Not to sound like too mamby-pamby here, but that's what I was trying to accomplish. So it must have been a time where I've just been thinking about, I think you get to a certain age, you start thinking about these things. You start, your life starts, you start looking at it in a certain perspective. So that's sort of what it's about. I don't know, any events? No, life's been cruising along pretty good.
Now, you mentioned you still play with the legendary Hearts. Is there anybody else in the business that you would like to work with?
It's funny in Canada. The last record, Gift Horse, or the one with Ballad of Old Tom Jones, I recorded a lot of that with Blue Rodeo. Love working with those guys. In Canadian music scene, I think it tends to be a fairly small group, and you kind of know each other. And I think the part I enjoy is just being the friendship with all those people.